Danquah. Joseph, nice to see you again. Do you think President Pierre Nkurunziza will listen to this call? I mean, will he now postpone the election? Is the government open to those proposals?
Well, he's intransigent. He wants to hold the elections as soon as possible because he wants to get through his agenda of the third term. But postponing elections is just basically sweeping the dust under the carpet. And other issues like ethnic and the tensions and the problem between the police and the army. These are things which need to be resolved, not the election being postponed.
And of course the biggest issue really is the third term plan. I mean, the opposition see the statement by East African nations as quite unhealthy. I mean, because their point is not about postponing the elections, but about the eligibility of the president to run again.
The issue at stake is that he wants to stand for a third term, and the opposition or the people at large say they don't want it. And postponing the election is just postponing the inevitable clashes, conflict, and then eventual war. It could turn into a full-scale war. And what I can see now is that Nkurunziza is bent on carrying out that agenda, no matter what may. But you see, looking at the East African leaders who met, somebody like President of Uganda, Museveni, is somebody who doesn't have the moral right to tell Nkurunziza not to stand again because he himself has stood 4 or 5 terms.
So that kind of undermines everything they're trying to do. But do you think that within Burundi, the third term plan is still up for negotiation or debate? Will the government negotiate further with the opposition on this, or is there a sense within Burundi that there won't be anybody listening, so let's keep the violence going, or let's keep the protests going?
You see, what happens now, it went from a protest to a coup attempt, failed coup attempt. Now, the next stage is that the opposition would like to carry on that momentum to make sure that they eventually get rid of President Nkurunziza. There's not going to be any compromise here because they are on a road which they want to end, seeing him out of power through his second term.
So essentially this summit has had the opposite effect.
Yes, it has.
In other words, instead of getting the people calming the situation, it's further inflamed it because now they're threatening bigger protests.
Yes, they have promised bigger protests, and it could even get more violent because you've had over 100,000 people going into exile, becoming refugees. You got the former rebel, the former coup leader also leaving the country. Now, what could happen is that this man who's gone out of the country, the former rebel leader, could then bring about an insurrection. See, these are some of the issues which President Nkurunziza needs to look at, because you're not looking at the present situation, it's looking at the triple and quadruple effect on the nation at large.
But perhaps what the move that's been taken by those East African countries to say, let's put off the elections, let's not heat up if you like, the mood in the country by saying no third term or saying, this or that. Let's just put off the elections, which will give us more time to negotiate.
Well, that is that's possible. But then are the East African countries willing to make sure that he doesn't stand for a third term? Because they didn't make mention of it in their communique about the issue of the third term. They did not even make mention of it. So therefore, you cannot trust those East African leaders to carry out their promise of maybe negotiating.
Joseph, you watch this situation quite keenly. What will it take for this crisis to be resolved?
The crisis needs to be resolved by President Nkurunziza leaving the scene. He is the obstacle to peace, or is the obstacle for the country to run smoothly. The people want to see him out. They are bent on making sure that he leaves. This is a country which has been bedeviled by centuries of instability, and through one individual it can restart after years of 10 to 15 years of peace, and that is what we should look at.
And of course this has now led to almost 100,000 people fleeing from Burundi to neighboring countries. Whilst President Nkurunziza is holding on to power, how are those neighbors coping with this refugee situation?
Well, they have appealed to the UNHCR for help. They've also made sure that they've made out camps to meet these people. But this has got other social problems in those countries in terms of, like, have they got the infrastructure to continue to host these refugees? What is going to be the effect in those countries camps, because we all know that most of these refugee camps turn into playgrounds where the rebels go in there and rape and loot and maim people. And so therefore, it's got a quadruple effect in the whole of that sub-region of East Africa, and which the Great Lakes region is very volatile and could be taken into something major.
Joseph Danquah, thank you very much indeed for now. Well, I'm joined in the studio once again by the news analyst Joseph Danquah. I mean, Joseph, a fragile, uneasy truce with the Muslims and Christians huddled in different corners. What does that mean for peace in the Central African Republic?
Well, Central African Republic has been a country which it's a country, a failed state in permanent crisis. Historically been a country which has been unsettled and unable to come out of
from the days of Bokassa,
even back to David Dacko, to Bokassa, to Boziza, to Patese, all the past presidents. There's been frictions and wars, but now this has taken a different turn. Then it was political and ethnic. Now it's become religious between the Seleka and Anti-Balaka.
Meanwhile, of course, both the Muslim and the Christian communities accuse each other of stockpiling weapons. There is obviously fear that, one group is going to attack the other. Is there any evidence to imply that either group or both groups are, arming themselves in secret?
Well, you see, the country itself, generally, the French, who are supposed to be the peacekeepers there, or to monitor the peace, have been embroiled presently in some crisis. Some of their troops are said to have been engaged in some very illegal, illicit activities with children. The French are supposed to monitor the peace, but they're not doing it. But this problem about people stockpiling weapons. You see, the Seleka, which led by former President Todia, when they came into power for a short time of 2 years, they unleashed a lot of terror upon Christians. And now the Christians who are the Anti-Balaka are now in a position where they want to retaliate. So it's both sides against each other having scores to settle, and this is what is brewing up.
Now you talk about the French who are there in a peacekeeping capacity. What about the African Union? What are they doing?
Yes, I mean, you see, to monitor peace, you have to have a comprehensive peace plan or a truce in place. But it seems that the truce itself is not working. So the role of these peacekeepers, basically, their hands are tied. So therefore, they are supposed to, their ability to intervene and secure the peace is very, very, very limited, because the peace process itself is not working.
And of course, in order for this peace to work, each side must feel adequately compensated for whatever claims they have. And also, they must feel that they've gained some kind of justice. Do you see this realistically happening then?
What they need to do now is that there needs to be, when everything settles, they need to draw a constitution which would be based upon equity on religious and ethnic grounds, whereby the people of different religious groups will be guaranteed positions in government, and so therefore it wouldn't be a winner takes all. And so therefore, to see people who are not of a certain religion or a certain background will feel that they're included within the system. That would be the only way for there to be peace in that country.
Joseph Danquah, we appreciate your analysis there. Thank you very much indeed.